Good Monday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock. Time for Sports for CLE. Hope you're having a good week. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. It was not a great weekend in Seattle for the Browns. They lose to the Seahawks 24-20. Key play, 3rd down and 3. 2 minutes, 4 seconds left. P.J. Walker throws an interception off the helmet of a blitzing Jamal Adams. Kevin Stefanski asked about throwing on 3rd and 3 with his backup quarterback.
Yeah, we had options there, Tom. I felt good about our group. Obviously, you'd prefer an incompletion there. It stops the clock at the 2 minute. We knew that. And obviously, you would have preferred a run for a gain of 0, 1, or 2, or get it. All of that's true. But the result didn't go the way we wanted. That's the truth. But you just got to continue to just do what you think is best for your team.
Obviously, you have not your starting quarterback in there. How much do you take that into account when you're making that kind of decision?
Yeah, I think you take everything into account, Scott. I think you take all of your players, certainly the quarterback, things that have been working throughout the game, run, pass, you name it. So you try to make all those things factor into really every decision.
With that, let's welcome in Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as BrownZone.com. And Scott, we were talking just before we got going. Everybody is up in arms about that 3rd and 3 call. I get it. I didn't have a huge problem with it.
I'm with you, Dave. Obviously in hindsight, it looks bad because you throw the interception. It leads to the winning touchdown for the Seahawks. But the percentages of running the ball on 3rd and 3 and converting, I don't think they're very high. And I don't have the numbers in front of me. But I'm sure that throwing for 3 yards on 3rd down, on 3rd and 3, the percentages are way higher. And it's not like he would have gone for it on 4th down because I don't think you can afford to do that. So if you don't get the 3 yards running the ball, then you have to punt it anyway. Kevin Stefanski's not expecting Walker to throw an interception. Maybe he should have, but you got to trust your quarterback, right? The guy's playing. You got to trust him to make a 4-yard throw. So I don't have a huge problem with it. The only issue I have is, like I asked Kevin there, is, you have your backup quarterback, maybe even your 3rd string quarterback starting. Do you trust him? Or do you just say, hey, we're kind of going to run into the line and punt and go play defense and hope my defense can stop them? I think I think that makes some sense. I understand that thinking, but I also get, hey, we got a guy playing quarterback in the NFL. He's got to make a 5-yard throw.
Yeah, and the other thing that likely factors into it, now they didn't miss time, but Kareem Hunt a little bit banged up. He had the quad injury the week before. You had Jerome Ford on a hobbled ankle, so they were spelling guys because of that. But I guess if you want to say anything at all, it's do you want the game in P.J. Walker's hands? But if he's playing quarterback, the game's in his hands anyway.
Right. And it's just hard. You got to trust your quarterback to make some plays. I'm sure the Seahawks were playing to stop the run, right? And even Jamal Adams blitzing can be to stop the run. And I'm sure Kevin Stefanski took that into account, that, hey, they expect us to run the ball, and we're going to cross them up, and we're going to throw it, and we're going to be aggressive and go win the game. And I appreciate that in Kevin Stefanski, the coach, and Kevin Stefanski, the play caller. I think that aggression serves you well more times than not. I think it's interesting that a lot of Browns people, whether they're fans or media, guys on my text chains, are risk averse. There's a sense of, hey, let's run it and punt and play defense. And I just don't think that's the way to play in the NFL in 2023. Now, you can make the exception for P.J. Walker. I'll completely listen to that. But generally speaking, I think you're better served keeping the ball, getting a 1st down, and winning the game that way than saying, hey, we're going to go trust our defense when, the other team knows it has 4 downs to convert, to pick up a 1st down. You get one deep pass interference call, and it changes everything, right? Like, it's hard to play defense in the last 2 minutes in this league. So from a general standpoint, I completely understand Kevin Stefanski's thinking.
As you might imagine, plenty of voicemails. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I wanted to give Stefanski this game. He did pretty good in this game. However, he did make a bonehead call again. 2 minutes left in the game, 3rd down and 3. The running game's been fine, and you throw the ball with a quarterback who's young and already thrown 2 interceptions happen like that because Kevin Stefanski just wouldn't run that ball when he needed to. Other than that, not a lot of penalties. Teams seem to be ready. I just think Kevin Stefanski made a bonehead call again. All he had to do was run that ball, kick it away, let him march down the field, and he threw a pass. All right, thanks. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. And we've kind of talked about this one quite a bit. What are your takeaways from the game in Seattle, just as you watch it?
Yeah. I mean, I like the fact that the caller recognized that Stefanski had a good game, right? I do think the Browns were prepared. They handled the noise. That's a tough place to play. Maybe one false start. I thought the operation was good. There weren't timeouts to avoid delay of games. I thought he did a great job in calling screens, right? Seattle, you could tell how aggressive that Seattle defense was early. And they got some pressure on P.J. Walker. I thought they got some sacks. And all of a sudden, it's a 12-yard screen to Kareem Hunt. It's a 41-yard screen to Pierre Strong Jr. It's a 41-yard screen to David Njoku. Even Njoku's touchdown had some screen elements to it where Walker looked like he faked right and then threw back over the middle to Njoku. So I thought Stefanski did a really good job in that way. You know, they're down 14 early, and there's no panic. The Browns came back. They showed resilience like they have, you know, pretty much all season long. So I like that part of it. I think defensively, you know, it's another bad start. It's 3 straight games. They've given up a touchdown on the first drive. They gave up 2 in a row this time. One was aided by a Walker turnover, but still 2 straight touchdowns. Then the defense played great for like 2.5 quarters. And then it couldn't get the stop at the end. And, you know, that's another big part of this. Like if Walker completes that pass, first of all, I don't think anybody's obviously nobody be freaking out, but I don't think you'd hear all this discussion about, oh, I really thought he should have run. You throw a pass, you complete a slant to Amari Cooper, you get a first down, everyone goes on, and it's great. And they close out the game. Or if your defense steps up, whether or not it's after the interception, which was on the Seattle 43, it wasn't like you gave them the ball in field goal territory, or you punted and gave them on the 20, they could still kick a field goal. So at some point, you're probably going to need your defense to get a stop at the end, and it couldn't do it. And it also didn't do it against San Francisco. They got bailed out by the missed field goal by Jake Moody. And cornerback Martin Emerson said it after the game. If we're going to be the best defense in the league, we got to get the stops at the end of the game. And I'm paraphrasing there.
When you look at it, there's now a little bit of what Jim Schwartz is doing with the defense that offensive coaches can dissect and take a look at. Is there anything that's terribly concerning about the defense, and how confident are you that Jim Schwartz can now, okay, this is what teams are trying to do to us, this is what we need to do as the next. So it's always another progression of steps. So how confident are you that Jim Schwartz knows the next steps, and is there anything that's really concerning about the defense?
Yeah, I think he'll be able to figure it out. I mean, Jim Schwartz is really smart. He's been doing this a long time. It is concerning, the slow starts and the finishes. I mean, those are concerning. I don't know if, that feels like a bigger picture thing than, specific things, right? Like I know, for instance, Kenneth Walker had the 45-yard run. It looked like JOK was out of position, kind of took the wrong angle, and that led to the long run. I think you see that from time to time. What is concerning for me, Davis, it feels like a couple of times a game, there's plays that are just too easy for the offense. And, I'm sure that happens across the league, right? The Browns get easy plays on offense and nobody says, oh my gosh, the defense really messed up there. But I think of a couple of examples. I think there was a 3rd and 12 on the first or second Seattle drive, and they converted and it became a touchdown. Well, you get a team backed up like that, and that's a long, 3rd and 12 is tough. The Browns have been really good on 3rd down this year. That's when you need to get off the field, and they weren't able to do that. And then there was a 2nd and 15, and they ran a simple bubble screen to the right side, and guy went for like 19 yards, and I don't know if he was touched until he was either pushed out of bounds or tackled. It was just too easy, and I don't know if that's just Schwartz being aggressive and he gets caught in a bad play call, but it feels like there's been more of those lately, and I think they got to shore that up.
All right, so Kevin Stefanski today was asked about the whole quarterback situation with the Browns.
Can you just give us any idea whatsoever what the outlook is or what the feeling is on Deshaun's chances whatsoever this week? Is he making progress? Are you hopeful? Can you characterize it in any way?
Yeah, I just would tell you, Mary Kay, he's continuing to come along. We'll make those type of decisions later on in the week.
I know with Deshaun, we're unsure, but if he cannot go, would PJ start, or is there any possibility you would look at the rookie?
Yeah, we'll make, again, all those determinations roster-wise are for later in the week.
And Scott, take a look at this. This is one of the reasons that they're not committing to anybody. The Browns lead the NFL with 17 turnovers, and they are tied for second to worst with a -7 turnover battle. They've lost turnover battle in all games but the Colts. They lost it again yesterday. P.J. Walker threw 2 interceptions, lost a fumble. Browns lost the turnover battle 3-2. So that's why I think he's kind of hesitating. You can't keep doing that. It's something in the order of 76%. It might even be higher. If you win the turnover battle, 76% of the time you win the game in the NFL. So the fact that the Browns are 4-3 and have lost all but one of those is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's 2.5 a game, right? I mean, it's really difficult to overcome that. Now, DTR, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the one start he made, he turned it over 3 times. So, he and PJ Walker kind of both turn it over at the same clip. I know DTR's sample size is much smaller. Walker, at least, and I don't know how fair it is to judge DTR off that one start, right? It was a tough situation. He plays the Ravens, but I know he was overmatched that game. Didn't look like he was ready. It didn't just feel like they could move the ball offensively. And Walker, for as many turnovers as he's had, the offense has moved the ball. Like, there is a threat there. He made some big-time throws. But I did think Stefanski's non-answer was interesting because, to me, it feels like Walker is the no-brainer, just given how bad DTR played in that one start. But maybe Stefanski is really scarred by not only those turnovers, but that late interception, right? He put the game in Walker's hand, and Walker let him down. Whether or not, if it was his fault that, Jamal Adams happens to jump and head it up in the air and they get the interception, I don't know if that's all Walker's fault. You look at the replay, it looked like Njoku's open in the left flat. It looks like Jerome Ford's coming open over the middle out of the backfield. Maybe it's just a matter of it's a bad decision on P.J. Walker's part. So I could see if Stefanski was just kind of traumatized by that and isn't ready to say that this guy's going to be my quarterback. I also think you have to take in the trade deadline into account. And maybe Stefanski did not want to commit to P.J. Walker with the chance that the Browns could add a quarterback by tomorrow afternoon, and that would change the picture.
Scott Petrak from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll also talk a little bit about the Browns' running game. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
This is the 50, 100, 500 scratch-off from the Ohio Lottery, a much cleaner way of winning. We precision-crafted 3 perfect increments of cash, $50, $100, and $500, and created the only game that pays exclusively in those increments, hence the clever name. 50, 100, 500. Ideal quantities for dining foods, clothing wear, or stereophonics. The simplicity is breathtaking. Play 50, 100, 500, and transform how you feel about winning.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownZone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I'm a 70-year-old lifelong Cleveland Browns fan, but this was a very winnable game, and I put the loss on the coach. We had 3rd down with 2 yards to go at the 2-minute warning. We could have had 2 plays to pick up those 2 yards and maybe run the clock out or got in field goal range. The quarterback played a commendable game, but he is what he is. He can't make a clutch play when it's needed. Our defense is not elite. They can't make a stop when it counts. And finally, the left tackle needs replaced. He's terrible. Thank you.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Scott, again, I don't know that falls on Kevin Stefanski. I can't argue. I don't think you want to put the game in but he didn't put the game in PJ Walker's hands. It's not like, I'm sure, the one thing I will say in watching PJ Walker, I thought he was a half a beat slow making decisions pretty much all game. Even the sack, it's like, oh, he's coming. He didn't have a sense for the feel of the game.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation, Dave. I think you're probably right about that. And, it's not an easy spot for him to be in. I get that. Hasn't played a ton, but has played some. But, it's difficult. He got here, and, I think his first practice is September 4th. It's not a long time to get up to speed. He hadn't taken any first-team reps until before that Niners game. So it's a tough spot. And again, it's a tough spot for Kevin Stefanski, too. Like, you're playing this quarterback. You got to trust him to make some throws. It's a similar discussion after that Ravens game when DTR played. Like, everybody blamed Kevin Stefanski for, not putting DTR in better spots. Like, sometimes your quarterback just got to make some throws. And if he can't, I don't care who's calling the game, you're not going to be able to have success. So I think it's a tough spot all around. Deshaun Watson's unavailability, if that's the word, has put them in this spot. I know, I don't think anybody with the team thought that Deshaun Watson would miss, all but 12 snaps of 4 games when he took that hit against the Titans, but that's where they are, and it's really affected this team. And I do think Kevin Stefanski deserves credit for them being 4-3, despite missing your quarterback, your franchise quarterback, for 4 games. I think that's credit to Stefanski. Now, the caller's right. They had a chance to win that game. And 5-2, I think people would have felt really good about this team being 5-2, especially with Watson missing all that time, with PJ Walker. Like, there would have been a big boost to go to Seattle and get that win. I don't think it's a crushing loss because I expected them to lose, but it's crushing because of the momentum you'd have had if they would have won that game. So I think all those points are legit. I'm with the caller that you cannot call this defense elite until it gets big stops at end of games. It got a couple at the end of that Colts game, but it also gave up 38. So it's tough to make that argument coming out of that game. I think it has the potential to be elite. Yeah, I see the talent on the front end and the back end, but it needs to be there in key moments. And just one last point, like, I don't know what I don't know what people are looking at that Jed Wills is doing, and they insist on criticizing him. He had one false start yesterday. Otherwise, I thought he played really well, and it's 3 straight games coming out of the bye that Jed Wills has played really well. I think people just have it in their heads that he's bad, and I don't think they're really paying attention because I watch every snap he takes, and he's better than people think he is.
I would agree. The last 3 games, I thought he's been really good. And you're starting to see some.
He played through a bum. He had a bad foot and ankle. He played every snap.
And I think you're starting to see him play with some emotion, which I think is a good thing too. I'm with you with the defense. It needs to show up a little bit more consistent. I think they're good. I'm not going to say they're elite until they start shutting some people down late in games. So the Browns ran for 155 on a hobbled Jerome Ford with Kareem Hunt and Pierre Strong doing it. Strong still not getting reps. Second most yards that Seattle has surrendered in a game this season. So the Browns have run the ball pretty effectively since the bye, Scott. Almost just under 4 yards a game against the Seahawks. How are they doing it? And just your thoughts on the run game since the bye.
Yeah, it's been night and day from those 2 games right before the bye. And, the defenses they faced before the bye had something to do with that. Tennessee's really good against the run. Baltimore's really good against the run. But they did, I think the coaching staff went into that bye and found some things schematically that they do well and said, okay, we're going to lean on these things. We're going to rely on these things. I think they challenged the offensive line that didn't play particularly well in those 2 games heading into the bye, especially some of those one-on-one matchups they just lost. And I think the line's been much better since the bye. Jedrick Wills is part of that, but it's not just him. I think it was across the line. And I think it also speaks to, yes, they missed Nick Chubb. There's no doubt about it. And, if Nick Chubb's healthy, does he get the carry on 3rd and 3 and pick up a first down? Maybe, right? Maybe that happens. So I would never say they don't miss Nick Chubb. But I do think philosophically, big picture wise, the way they've been able to run the ball the last 3 weeks, I think is some proof that you can do it without an elite back. And you can do it by committee if you have a really good scheme and a really good offensive line. And I think the Browns always felt that way. They just had Nick Chubb, and now they have to, kind of show it that their philosophy is right. And I think we're seeing that if you block well and open some holes, guys are going to be able to run through it no matter who it is.
Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, love the show. Long-time viewer, long-time caller. I actually like the running back room. I like Pierre Strong. I think he needs to get more work. I think he just brings a different dimension. I actually like him better than Jerome Ford, if you ask me. I mean, because he can catch too, but there's just something about when Pierre Strong catches the ball, something electric's bound to happen. I like that kid.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Again, the one thing I say about young players, the more I see of Pierre Strong, the more I want to see him. That means I tend to agree. There's just something about him that you want to see more of.
Yeah, there's a burst, and we saw it on that 41-yard screen. Jerome Ford has a burst too. We saw it on that 69-yard touchdown against the Colts. He can get out and run. And I think I would say he's probably a little more physical than Strong. That's just early impressions. I haven't seen a ton of Strong, just like everybody else, right? I saw him in practice, but he got here late in the preseason, so you didn't get to see him in training camp a bunch. But he has showed me something the last 2 games. And, Stump Mitchell does a good job, even when it was Chubb and Hunt, right? He did a good job kind of balancing those 2 guys. Even, see a little bit of Dearness Johnson every once in a while. And I think he tends to do a really good job managing who gets the ball when, who gets the reps when. Now, Kareem Hunt would disagree with the fourth quarter usage yesterday, and that would be interesting to talk to Stump about because, usually Kevin Stefanski kind of relies on Stump to decide who's going in the game. I know that's how it's been in the past. But in general, I think Stump is the right guy to manage that 3-headed, running back by committee.
All right, I know this one's from your mailbag. So Elijah Moore seems to have had minimal impact game outcomes, but all the advanced stats tell you that he's getting open. We haven't been able to get him the ball. How do you evaluate him so far?
Yeah, it's not easy. I do think he's made some meaningful plays the last few weeks. I think of that 30-yarder in the winning drive against the Colts. I think there's another play over the middle, a catch and run that was big. So I think he's starting to show up more. I still think Kevin Stefanski's trying to find the perfect ways to get on the ball. He's tried a bunch of trick stuff and out of the backfield, and it didn't have the success I don't think they were looking for. So that feels like it can't be a staple. Maybe it's a player here, 1 or 2 plays a game where you get it to him a different way. I think more bubble screens, get the ball in his hands in space, and I think they have to figure that out. And I also think, Dave, it's really tough when the quarterback situation is, as shaky as it's been, right? I mean, they have the worst quarterback situation in the league, like statistically, right? Pass rating, probably turnovers. It's hard to evaluate your receivers when you don't have a reliable guy getting them the ball.
Yeah, and especially guys like Goodwin and Moore who have speed and you need a guy that can consistently get him the ball. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll go back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and look some more at the offense. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. Couple things. On number one, the defense is good, but it's not great. They can't close out the game. They had a lot of trouble with the quick pass to the ends and a lot of yard after catch. So I would not call them a great defense. The Browns definitely need a new quarterback. They are not a playoff team the way they stand right now. I don't know when Deshaun's going to come back and when he comes back, if he's going to be any good. So they have to get a new quarterback. Thanks a lot, Dave. Take care. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, we've already kind of agreed defense needs to kind of step it up and close out games. Their quarterback play needs to improve. I don't know if that means go out and get a quarterback. If not, they're going to struggle to get in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I like the Lorain County shout out there. It's so hard because they just, as far as I know, they don't know when Deshaun Watson's going to play. And I think they believe he's going to play sooner rather than later. And if that's true, then I don't think they feel a sense of urgency to go get a guy like Jacoby Brissett. Now, we can argue if that's the wrong move. They're the wrong thinking, right? And you could say, hey, what if Watson gets hurt again? What if, it's a different injury or the same injury and he doesn't finish the season? Can you get to the playoffs with P.J. Walker? It would be really hard. And, not impossible if your defense starts playing even better. But it would be difficult. And I think Jacoby Brissett is a substantial upgrade over P.J. Walker. And he would just fit. I mean, it's like, I don't know if Washington would be willing to trade him. But if they were, it just makes sense. He'd be seamless. He played here last year. Guys love him. I think you could trust him. I think with this defense, they would have won a lot more games last year. So I understand that. I just think if the Browns' thinking is, well, if Watson comes back and he plays the last, how many games they got? 10, right? 9 or the last 10, or maybe he misses one more and he plays the last 9. Do you really need to go give up a draft pick to get Jacoby Brissett as insurance? And we could argue about that, but I think that's the decision they would have to make. But it is the most important position. You are in a position to go to the playoffs. So, I would not fault Andrew Berry at all if he went and made that move, even if Jacoby Brissett doesn't take a snap the rest of the season.
So take a look at this tweet. 3 games for the Browns. P.J. Walker is completing less than 50% of his passes, 1 touchdown, 5 interceptions. They're 2-1 in those games. It's not winning football. I knew all of that, but when you look at that and process it, it's really hard to look at that production that you're getting from the quarterback.
Yeah, touchdown passes can be weird because, they hand the ball a lot inside the 5, that diminishes your touchdowns. But the under 50%, and he threw, 4 straight incompletions at the end of that game at least, the 3 on the last drive and then that interception. So that, affects the stats a little bit, but he just, he's not a high completion percentage guy. And that's tough, especially when you combine it with turnovers, right? Like, that's just not the recipe. Again, so that talks to, okay, do they need to upgrade there? I would say what's easiest is you need Deshaun Watson to play again, right? That would seem to solve plenty of things, assuming Watson's healthy enough and plays like you think Deshaun Watson should and could play. And the other part of that is, whoever you want to give the credit to, and I tend to give a lot of it to Kevin Stefanski, they've won 2 games with the quarterback playing at that level. Yep. And I don't know how some of that or a lot of that credit does not go to the coach for having his guys in that position.
All right, this is one more thing, and again, it's not pile on P.J. Walker here. These are QB grades and efficiency charts through week 8. X-axis, so across, is the offensive grade for PFF. Y-axis is the EPA per play. P.J. Walker is, it's not good. And as I'm watching that game yesterday, Scott, I'm thinking, watching P.J. Walker is a lot like riding a roller coaster at Cedar Point. You're kind of looking over the edge, and then you go down the thing, and it's like, man, that was not what I expected. And there are some highs that are kind of high, but the lows are like, ooh.
Yeah, and if you look at that, I mean, Deshaun Watson and Joshua Dobbs, right, who they traded and that opened up the backup spot, they're not high on that chart, but they're still way to the right and higher than PJ Walker, right? So that would seem to signify to me that would be enough of an upgrade that they win yesterday's game, right? They would probably have a much better chance to win moving forward. And then Walker, he's interesting because, like, I don't have high expectations for him, but he's got a big arm. He can make a lot of throws, and you see it from time to time. He made hey, we're talking about Elijah Moore. He made a deep throw down the right seam to Moore yesterday, and I thought that was the best pass Walker's made with the Browns. And it wasn't like a super tiny window, but it wasn't a huge window. And you needed a big arm, and there was a safety coming, and he zipped it in there. And he's got that potential, but you talked about being a beat slow. He's not the tallest guy in the world, so I think some things he doesn't see, and maybe that shows up on 3rd and 3. There's a lot of bodies in front of him. He's not 6 feet tall. The interception to Njoku, he said it was miscommunication. So I think Njoku stopped, and he was continuing to lead him, and that happens. But some of the interceptions, the fumbles, like, they're not coming on like really difficult plays. They're just bad decisions / bad throws, and they're just, the rate of those is too high to live with.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's a roller coaster. Every time you watch him, it is there's ups and downs, loops and drops. Scott Petrick and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit more about the trade deadline and the Cardinals. Sports for CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Scott Petrick from the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as brownzone.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
This is Jim from Rochester. I have to hand it to our quarterback. He hangs in there and plays. But anytime we face any coach with any savvy of the game, our coach gets beat. Once again, we lost the game we should have won. And I'm going to say it, until they get rid of Mr. Stefanski and actually our general manager, we're going absolutely nowhere. That's what we're going to do is have our hearts broken like everybody in my house just did. Thanks again, Stefanski.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Scott, I don't agree. Quarterback's got to make some plays at the end of a game. I mean, again, play calling's play calling. At some point in time, the guys on the field have to make plays, and it goes offense and defense.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I get it, right? The buck stops at the coach. They lose, it falls on the coach. They lose, it falls on the GM. But, your quarterback makes one more throw, and they're 5-2. And, he beat Kyle Shanahan, who's considered one of the best coaches in the league. He beat Mike Vrabel, who's considered one of the best coaches in the league. So I just don't think it's correct or fair to say every time he comes up against a good coach, because that's just not the case. He's beaten Mike Tomlin, right, since he's been here. So there's certainly stuff you can criticize about Kevin Stefanski. I think if you took a step back, he's got a winning record since he's been here. He's had difficult situations. He's, we can fight about Baker, but he's really never had a quarterback situation that has been good, right? That Watson was supposed to fix that, and it has not. And yet they continue to be competitive, continue to win games. I get that the goals are much higher than that, and this discussion changes. If they get to the end of the season and miss the playoffs, we can have that talk. But right now, I don't think Kevin Stefanski is the problem.
No, and and the other thing is team fell behind 14 in a tough place to play, and they came back. Now, I don't want to get too far down that road because it's not about moral victories, but the team's playing for them, I guess, is the point I'm making. I know you've dealt with this on your mailbag. Do you think the Browns are contenders or pretenders regarding the upcoming trade deadline, 4 o'clock, so less than 24 hours away?
Yeah, it's tough. And I don't even know how I answered that yesterday morning. I had a red-eye flight, so I'm not even sure how I answered that yesterday. I think it's real close to 50-50 whether or not I think a trade gets done. I know that Andrew Berry, in his heart, is aggressive just by nature. I think if there's a move to be made that he thinks will improve this roster, he's going to make it, or improve the draft picks down the road, whatever it is, right? Like, if he thinks there's a move that's worth making, he is not going to shy away from making it. Having said that, there's only a couple of spots on this roster that I think you go, okay, they need an upgrade. Now, if there was a big injury came out of that game yesterday that we don't know about yet, and Kevin Stefanski wouldn't talk about him, he did say he's hopeful Zadarius Smith is okay. That would be a big one. Like if they were missing Zadarius Smith at end, all of a sudden that's another spot that maybe they would address. But let's assume Zadarius Smith is healthy. Like, I think they're fine on defense. I don't think there's anywhere you need to go on defense. So we talked about quarterback already. Maybe receiver. Now, Andrew Berry put together this receiving core. So I think he likes the guys here. We talked about it's hard to evaluate the receivers given the quarterback play. But maybe that's a spot you go, hey, when Deshaun Watson comes back, let's give him as much support as possible. And that means adding another quality receiver. So I could see Andrew Berry try to do that. Now, it's hard when he still doesn't have all the draft picks because of the Deshaun Watson trade. And cap space, we know they have some, but we also know what they're coming up against in the future. So I don't think it's as easy for him to do it as it might have been in the past or for some other organizations, which is why I'm kind of like 50-50 a trade gets done.
All right, take a look at this. These are the Browns' next 4 games. Browns are 4-3 on the year. All AFC teams have at least 2 losses after play yesterday. Here's the next 4. They host Arizona, they go to Baltimore, they host the Steelers, they go to Denver. They need to be 3-1 or 4-0 in those games. If they are able to do that, then the playoffs are a legitimate possibility. They absolutely have to beat the Cardinals regardless of which quarterback plays. They should beat the Cardinals. If they decide DTR gives them the best chance of winning, they should be able to beat the Cardinals with DTR at quarterback.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. I mean, you can make the argument that we've been saying all along that Joshua Dobbs is better than DTR. So if you don't have the quarterback advantage, are you really favored to win? That's a old argument that is usually holds true in this league. The team with the better quarterback is the team I would pick. But your point's taken. They should beat Arizona at home. I agree that 3-1 is ideal coming out of there, right? I think as long as you're keeping your head above 500, there's a chance to make a run and get in the playoffs. But to really establish yourself as a true contender and hang around the North with Baltimore trying to run away a little bit, 3-1 seems like the record there. But I just want to remind people, and I get it. I get the matchups. I get who's favored. Denver just beat Kansas City yesterday, right? Denver's been terrible all year. Kansas City's got the best quarterback in the league, and Denver beats them. So this is a weird league. You have to. I guess my point is you have to play every week. And when I say play, you have to play well every week. It comes down to execution on a given day. And if the Browns play well, I think they have a chance to beat anybody. If they don't play well, then they're susceptible to losing everybody. So that's, I get what you're saying about the Cardinals, but you got to show up and you got to play well, and you can't turn the ball over 7 times.
Scott Petrick, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram as well as brownzone.com. As always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Scott.
Thanks, Dave.
Again, check him out, Scott Petrick, brownzone.com on the internet, as well as the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Always really good Browns coverage. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports for CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, really, we are 4-2 and probably have the most talent that we have had at least since the Browns has been back since '99. And Stefanski, AB, Jimmy Haslam, they all wonder why we want Jacoby Brissett. Because last year, if we had our defense playing the way that it was, the way Jacoby was playing, we'd have been a playoff team last year. How can this organization do our fans this way? When you have all this cap space, how in the world can you not throw out a third or fourth round pick and get Jacoby Brissett on this ball team to finish this year out? This is ridiculous because we all know how good we can be. We just need somebody to manage the game. Dave, you take care. God bless. Have a good week.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Jack, you do a lot with the salary cap, and the caller alluded to the cap space. That cap space is kind of eaten up for next year already. You roll it over, and that's the reason that they're doing it, and that's the reason they're able to sign multiple free agents at big dollar contracts.
Yeah, the money's already assigned next year, and the team is, over the last 3 years, by far the most expensive in the NFL in terms of cash paid. And that's because Jimmy Haslam is fronting a bill over $50 million a year above league average. That's not above the Bears in bottom, that's just above the league average. So if you're going, hey, just throw out this extra money, well, that just comes off of the players you're going to have next year. So it's fine to spend more this year, but then if you spend an extra $10 million this year, that's as Darius Smith gone off the roster next year. And that's not, hey, you can go spend that money on someone else. That's gone. It's not, it doesn't replenish year on year. It's money that's assigned to next year's budget.
The other thing is a third or fourth round pick, I don't think I would do for Jacoby Brissett. I don't think I'd do a fifth round pick. If you're talking a sixth or a seventh round pick, you might be able to talk me into it.
Yeah, I think if we were going to see a deal, it'd be a pick swap. So one where we, say, gave up a fifth and got the player and a seventh back. The same way sort of the Elijah Moore, other trades have happened. But part of the issue, I think, could be we don't have the fourth, which is quite a nice value to do in some of these trades. But that went to the Texans as part of the Deshaun Watson deal. So kind of limits what you can do here. But yeah, why would the Commanders give him away on the cheap? You've got Ron Rivera, who's effectively a mixture of head coach and GM. He knows if he's not making the playoffs this year, he's probably getting fired. So when you're the GM, you're not thinking, hey, how can I set the 2024 Commanders up to have great success? You're thinking, how do I keep my job? He's got to win. So there's no appetite probably on their end to trade him off. I think it's one way you just stick with what you've got. And you roll with it. Who knows? That third round pick could be useful for trading up in the draft and maybe select a quarterback next year. Keep the options on the table. And Jacoby Brissett, is he going to win you a Super Bowl? If you get to the playoffs, can you legit see him winning you all the games through the playoffs? If the answer is no, why are we trading a third round pick to lose playoff games? The aspiration should be to win Super Bowls, not to hang a banner because we got knocked out in the first round of the playoffs.
All right, this is another one of your tweets, kind of your view on the trade deadline. Again, trade deadline tomorrow, Tuesday, the 31st, 4 o'clock is the trade deadline. Quarterback, Brissett an upgrade, but likely a third-round pick is what we're surmising the Commanders wanted. Running back, you don't see it. Why are people so desperate to dump Pierre Strong? Wide receiver, if you can get somebody cheap with a 2024 option year and swap DPJ, that's an interesting thought as well. Tight end, don't really need it. Offensive line, teams don't trade good offensive linemen at midseason. So basically, the thing you could see is a young wide receiver where you'd swap picks and maybe DPJ, correct?
Yes. So DPJ's, it's bizarre what we've seen from him. The last 3 years have been really nice. Year on year, he's got better, been really productive and massively outperformed where he was drafted. if you said he's a third round wide receiver, you'd say, hey, we've got fair value from those first 3 seasons. Whereas he was taken in the 6th and he's provided really, really well for the team. It's been weird. Going into this upcoming off-season next year, I was probably sitting there going, hey, 10 to 12 million is realistic for what DPJ could get a year. We're now probably in a conversation where it's a cheap 1-year deal, maybe even as low as sort of 4 or 5 million. Won't be with the Browns, it'll be with another team. And that's a shame for him, because you would love to have seen him get 20 million guaranteed, reward for how he's played for the Browns, but it's not to be. And so, yeah, flip him off. If you can get someone in that can do well this year for you, but then as well produce next year and have them under contract, it just gives you more options. And options are always a good thing to have.
Well, this is another one that, a hypothetical Jerry Jeudy. Jerry Jeudy, wide receiver for the Broncos, is a name we've heard tied to the Browns since before they acquired Elijah Moore. So this is kind of a hypothetical that you came up with. DPJ in a 2nd, for Jeudy in a 4th. And there is the option for Jeudy coming up next season as well. Take us through that and kind of your thoughts with this one.
Yeah, so there's been lots of smoke out there that they're interested in Jeudy. And I was kind of thinking, well, how do you make that work? You probably need to move off DPJ because, hey, it's all right adding players, and the same thing with people wanting running backs. You've got to then let someone go. So DPJ then makes sense to move off. And like the Elijah Moore trade, people at the time were like, oh, we gave up a 2nd-round pick for Elijah Moore. Well, no, not really. We just moved from the 2nd to the 3rd and got Cedric Tillman and Elijah Moore for that pick that went to Green Bay in the end via the Jets. And that's the kind of move that makes a lot of sense, because people look at the 2nd-round pick, panic, but when you sit down and you start looking at these draft boards and sort of the modern one, the Fitzgerald Spielberger, so a couple of guys from Over the Cap, developed one that looks more at the trade value and a much more sort of analytically driven approach. Roughly the difference between that 2nd round and a 4th rounder is pick 152, I believe, or 154 off the top of my head. But that's not that much to give up to upgrade from DPJ to Jeudy. So smart teams are looking at pick swaps. And if you can get value from doing it, by all means, go ahead, because that gives you a wide receiver, not just for this year, but for next year as well. Lots of options then on the table, because you can decide after the 2024 season, do you want to extend Cooper, Jeudy, Moore? It could be Cedric Tillman, you're going as a key part then. Bell could be up for an extension at that point. Maybe draft another player. You've got lots of options. Lots of young talent. Always the best place to be as a team.
Yeah, and when you talk about Cooper, Jeudy, Moore, that would seem to be a little bit of an upgrade from what you have. And again, you got guys that are relatively young and should be ascending. All right, this is another interesting Browns trade scenario. Let me run this one by. This is from A to Z Sports. Browns received Dalvin Cook, 2024 6th-round pick from the Jets, and they give up a 2024 5th-round pick. The question becomes, why can't Cook get more carries in New York with the Jets? I know Breece Hall, really good, and he's come back and he's healthy, and he's probably better than a lot of people realized. 2nd year back for the Jets that's coming off an ACL last year.
Yeah, excuse the pun, but I think Dalvin's cooked. And I think you're at the point of, like, where would he honestly stack in the current Browns depth chart? I would rather Ford was out there. Hunt, I'm really surprised how well he's playing. So I'd probably say he's rivaling that. And Pierre Strong's shown flashes. And flashes aren't what we've seen from Dalvin Cook in the last couple of years. So I think you're at a point where you're going, why? Why do we want to add him? Because especially if that leads to Strong getting cut because you can't, they ideally want 3 running backs on the roster. Well, what we achieved, we may as well just stick with what we've got. So I'm really happy actually at running back. Next offseason, I want to strengthen, want to keep getting better, but let's give those opportunities to Ford. Let's give them to Strong. Mix in some some Hunt there in short yardage situations. You've got a nice trio there. It's full running back by committee, and I believe that's where the Browns will end up long term. Who knows sort of how long, what the career arc now of Chubb looks like, but I don't think we'll see another scenario where we've got that one bell cow back. Most smart teams, the Eagles are always a good idea of what to look at when you expect the Browns moving forward. and they've got a full committee system, I believe that's where we're going to be.
All right. One more tweet that you had relative to the quarterback position. If you want a quarterback trade at the deadline, the only one realistically on the market and cheap, you mean day 3, by way of trade compensation is probably Ryan Tannehill. Issue is he's costing $15 million for the rest of the season, so the Titans would need to eat quite a bit of that. And they might be more inclined to do that based on the way Will Levis played in his first start yesterday. They got the ball to DeAndre Hopkins, which is something they couldn't figure out how to do.
Yeah, he played some phenomenal football, and it's one that I'm happy staying with what we've got. The belief is that Watson will definitely miss this upcoming week against the Cardinals, but quite frankly, if we can't beat the Cardinals with what we have at quarterback, something is seriously wrong, because they almost don't want to win at times. So the Browns should easily be able to win this week. And then, rumours are Watson should be back for that Ravens game. But the Ravens are probably going to win that game. So it's not one where if you trade for a quarterback, that drastically impacts the chances of winning that game. It's probably going to be a loss. So realistically, you need Watson back for the Steelers game. So he's got 2 more weeks, 3 weeks effectively of recovery if you want to go nearer to that game. So why are we trading assets for a quarterback? I think you've just got to see it out, win 1, lose 1, and then we keep rolling. Bookies still have us in a good spot. I think we can make the playoffs here.
Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about guys the Browns might look to extend. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is the 50, 100, 500 scratch-off from the Ohio Lottery, a much cleaner way of winning. We precision-crafted 3 perfect increments of cash, $50, $100, and $500, and created the only game that pays exclusively in those increments, hence the clever name. 50, 100, 500. Ideal quantities for dining foods, clothing wear, or stereophonics. The simplicity is breathtaking. Play 50, 100, 500, and transform how you feel about winning.
We continue talking Browns with Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Rather than fire him as head coach and get another head coach, can he just give up the offensive coordinator job and get some new, refreshing offense in there instead of that whatever it is he's trying to run? And you can't tell me about not having Chubb or not having a quarterback. It's ridiculous. Watch how he calls. It's the same plays. It's just too bad. And I wish you would give up the offensive coordinator's job first, and let's put somebody else in there. Okay, guys? Thanks. Bye.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jack, it's kind of his offense. He understands it better than anybody else. So and again, you can't say, don't tell me about not having Chubb or a quarterback or a right tackle. That affects the play calling.
So this is one that you just can't do it mid-season. Just completely put that to one side for anyone talking about a dramatic change mid-season. And to be fair, it's one that is frustrating at times because you sit there and watch the All-22 after the game and there's so many guys that are wide open and you think, oh, just if the quarterback saw that. Stefanski's done a great job of elevating quarterbacks that have been sort of middle of the road and made them better than what they were. We've seen it with Cousins, we've seen it with Baker, we've seen it with Jacoby Brissett. What we didn't see is him manage to take Watson and make Watson better than above average. And that's the point where Stefanski's probably going to be doing a good job with Walker and getting him to play better than Walker actually is. Even though Walker's been pretty bad for the last 3 weeks, there's elements where he's still elevating that play. So I think the question comes of next season, what do you want to do? And I am fully in support of, I don't want to fire Kevin Stefanski, because the minute you do that, does Jim Schwartz stay? Does a new head coach come in and call for turnover? Well, you can't turn much over because the way the roster's built, pretty much the roster this year is going to look really similar to the roster next year, just where the Browns have so much money invested. You're investing in multi-year deals, so you can't just kick everyone off and go through a rebuild. It's going to be a similar team. I think the best route to go is Kevin Stefanski to sit there and think, actually, play calling and an offensive coordinator, bring someone in and see if they can have a skill set and an offense that is going to move Deshaun Watson to above average. Because above average is great. If he's top 16, you're happy. If he's top 8, build the statue because we're going to the Super Bowl. It's got the potential to be that important. A name I keep an eye on is Zach Robinson. Really intrigues me. He's the pass game coordinator over with the Rams. And that's a guy that I think could really help and take this team to the next level. But yeah, I'm all for keeping the unit together. I think Kevin does a good job and gets a lot out of the locker room. The play calling's good, but I don't know if it's the right scheme and system to get Deshaun Watson back to being a top 8 quarterback.
Would you extend him? Being Kevin Stefanski, would you extend him as a head coach and kind of say, look, we want you to be the head coach. We want you to find an offense that makes Deshaun Watson elite?
Yeah, I would. I think there's a lot of benefit to when Kevin Stefanski was brought in, Andrew Berry returned, those two and Dee Podesta were all given a 5-year deals. And I think, especially if they can get to the playoffs this year, that's the point where you go, right, let's extend these guys. Because there is a massive benefit to keeping the same group of people together long term. They're producing, on average, solid wins. If we're looking over the start of his career so far, he's won more games than Kyle Shanahan did in that time. And it's not to say, hey, he's as good as Kyle Shanahan, but he's producing good results. They could be better, but I don't think you get better than where you're getting by blowing it up. I think you're much better going, actually, let's continue building on this. Andrew Berry's made lots of great trades. The Deshaun Watson one hasn't worked out at the moment. But that, for me, is not a point of going, hey, let's blow it all up and start from square one. It's going, keep this group together, keep the plan that has produced some good results, and let's take it to the next level. So I would extend them because just that effort of tearing it all up usually means, hey, we put this on ice for 2 years as we try to get everything together. And then we're down the line of Myles Garrett's pretty much burnt out, maybe doesn't want to extend his deal. And we just get into the negatives. I think keep the positives there. And Kevin Stefanski's probably looking within himself and going, should I give up play calling? Because people have said he should have done it by now. There is no logical point where he should have done that. Came in, having elevated Kirk Cousins. Year 1, he elevates Baker Mayfield. Year 2, Baker Mayfield gets hurt, so it doesn't make sense for him to give it up then. He then elevates Jacoby Brissett and deals with 6-game sample of Deshaun Watson, which wasn't great. So after any of them seasons, are you really telling me the 6-game sample of Deshaun Watson was bad enough that he should have gone, oh, I need to give up play calling now? Not for me.
Yeah, that's, again, as you walk it through it, that does make sense. All right, let's talk a little bit about guys that could be extended. Greg Newsome, what do you think happens with Donovan Peoples-Jones? I'll throw those two out.
Yeah, I think Donovan Peoples-Jones is on the trade block. It wouldn't surprise me if by the time the trade is done, he's gone. And that could be as low as a 6th, 7th rounder. It could be a late pick swap where we're getting next to nothing for him. I think it's one where they're ready to move on. But it's just a case of can they find someone to bring in? Because they wouldn't want to trade him off and bring no one in because you've got sort of 3 guys below that, Goodwin and the 2 youngsters. But you don't want to rely on any of them playing 80% of snaps because they're playing a lot of 3 wide receiver sets. Greg Newsome's time in Cleveland, I cannot see an extension at this current point. And the reason for that is his play's okay, but MJ Emerson is much better. And that draws a line of, hey, you've already paid Ward. You can probably get away with paying one of the others. And if I'm paying one of them, I'm deciding to pay Emerson. So you've still got plenty of time on Newsome's deal because this is year 3. And at the end of this season, I expect them to pick up the 5th-year option. So we've got 2.5 years from this point where we are at the moment. But I think after the 2024 season, that's the ideal time to trade him. Hopefully by then Cam Mitchell's ready to step up. But it's much, much easier to go out and find a slot corner to come in and produce than it is to go out and find a boundary corner. So if they're in a good spot, potentially they'll draft another guy in day 3 next year. He's probably one to keep an eye on. It could happen this offseason. If they get a really good deal, they could move on from him. So just keep that in mind. but after 2024 makes an awful lot of sense.
All right, before I let you go, you tweeted this out as well, updated AFC playoff odds. You see the Chiefs are prohibitive favorites to win the AFC. Bengals now minus 150, Browns 125. The Ravens in there at the fourth spot at minus 350. And then there's a significant drop-off between the Browns. Top 7 would make the playoffs. So between the Browns and the Steelers, pretty significant drop-off. So basically, what this is telling you, if the Browns go out and beat the teams they should beat, they're probably a playoff team this year.
Yeah, if they've got to get to 10 wins, and they're very, very, very likely to be in. So they're not in a bad spot at all. And you think they're producing this with substandard at best quarterback play? It's one that there is more positives to take from the moment, because it's funny that we look at the Steelers and for years, poor QB play, great defense, give all the praise to the head coach. What do we see with the Browns? We see poor QB play, great defense, fire the coach. It just doesn't make sense. I think we're in a really, really nice spot as a team. Yes, it is frustrating, but now's not the time to panic. Vegas feels good about us making the playoffs. We were minus 200 last week, the same odds as the Bills, and it was a nail-biting loss that it's dropped, but it's not dropped to a bad point. We beat the Cardinals, boom, we're back in a great spot. If we then lose the Ravens and then beat the Steelers, we're in a really, really good drive through to the rest of the season. So 10 wins is the challenge. If we get 10 wins and we don't make the playoffs, that is just really, really, really bad luck. But let's just do it. Let's get there.
Jack Duffin from the Orange and Brown Report, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jack.
Thanks a lot.
Jack Duffin, make sure you check him out. Always really good stuff. A lot on the salary cap as well as the trade deadline. Orange and Brown Report is where you can find him. Follow him on Twitter as well. Really good stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.